Listen to me right now. Stop scrolling. Put the phone down, because there's a clock ticking and you can't hear it. You can see it, but it is counting down to the moment when your chance to buy meaningful amounts of Bitcoin ends forever. Not because Bitcoin disappears, not because it fails, but because every single day Bitcoin is being pulled off the market by institutions that have one simple plan. Buy it, lock it up, never sell it back. And while you're reading this, while you're thinking, while you're waiting for a dip, waiting for certainty, waiting for the perfect entry, the available supply is vanishing. That's what should scare you, because most people think they have time. They think Bitcoin will always be available, always accessible, always there at some price. They think they can wait a year, 2 years, 5 years, and still get positioned. They are catastrophically wrong. The window isn't measured in years, it's measured in cycles, in quarters, in the amount of time it takes for institutional allocation to absorb what is left of liquid supply. And that time is far shorter than anyone realizes. You don't have a decade to decide. You probably don't have 5 years. You might not even have 2. The clock is ticking down to 0, and when it hits 0, when the available supply is gone, you don't get another chance. Not ever. So let me show you exactly what you're missing, why time matters more than price, and why waiting is the most dangerous financial decision you can make right now. Let's start with a number that should shock you. Every single day, approximately 900 new Bitcoin are mined. That's the current flow of new supply entering the system, 900 Bitcoin, daily. Now here's the part nobody wants to talk about. Institutions are buying more than that. The ETFs alone have days where they absorb more than daily issuance. MicroStrategy keeps buying. Corporates are accumulating. Private funds are building exposure. Sovereign money is exploring strategic allocation. Do the math. When demand is bigger than new supply, you enter a condition called a structural supply deficit. Not maybe someday, not in the future. Today. Right now. And the key point is that this deficit gets worse over time because Bitcoin's new supply shrinks on a fixed schedule. The halving cuts issuance every 4 years, whether the world is ready or not, so new supply is declining mechanically, while institutional demand is rising reflexively. That's not opinion. That's not narrative. That's mathematics. It's a countdown. Now here's what most people misunderstand about supply. They look at the total number 21 million and they assume there's plenty. But that is like looking at the amount of gold on Earth and saying it's all for sale. It isn't. The only supply that matters is liquid supply Bitcoin that is actually available for purchase on exchanges or in the market without moving price massively, and liquid supply is tiny because a huge percentage is already locked up. Lost coins, long-term holders, self-custody, institutional custody, corporate treasuries. Cold storage that hasn't moved in years. So while people argue about total supply, the real battle is happening inside a much smaller pool. Think of liquid supply like a reservoir. New mining is water flowing in. Institutional buying is water flowing out. For years, inflow was enough to keep the reservoir stable. But now we've crossed the threshold. Outflow is greater than inflow. The reservoir is draining, and the rate of drainage is accelerating. At these rates, the market doesn't need 10 years to change. It can change in months. And when that reservoir gets thin enough, price discovery breaks, spreads widen, slippage explodes, and buying becomes harder and harder for normal people. Not because Bitcoin is too expensive, because there isn't enough available at any price. Now let me explain why waiting for dips is a broken strategy in this environment. A lot of people are operating on an outdated playbook. They think Bitcoin will crash the way it did before. They're waiting for a 50% drop. They're waiting for an 80% drawdown. They think that makes them smart and patient. But those crashes happened in a market dominated by retail emotion. Retail bought tops, retail panics old bottoms that created huge volatility. But the market structure is changing in real time. Institutions don't panic sell. Pension funds don't capitulate. Sovereign money doesn't get emotional. They have mandates, they have allocation targets, they execute systematically, which means when Bitcoin drops 10-20, they don't run away, they see it as a discount, they buy more, they absorb supply faster, they stabilize the drawdown, they remove coins from circulation permanently, so volatility compresses, crashes get shallower, recoveries get faster, and the people waiting for the big crash might wait forever, not because Bitcoin is safe, because the buyer base has evolved. Let me show you how this plays out in the real world. You see Bitcoin at $80,000. You say, I'll wait for $60,000. You think you're being disciplined, but while you're waiting, institutions are buying at $80,000. They don't care about a 10% move. They care about one thing, accumulation before supply becomes unattainable. So Bitcoin goes to $90,000. Now you say, okay, I'll buy when it comes back to 80,000, but it doesn't. It goes to $100,000 because Supply is tighter because ETFs keep absorbing, because corporate treasuries keep stacking, because the market is structurally bid. Now maybe you finally get your dip. Bitcoin drops from $100,000 back to $85,000. You feel relief. You think, here it is. My entry. But you're not actually better off. Because during that entire run-up, more supply was drained, so even if the price comes back, availability is worse. You're playing a game where you try to optimize price, while ignoring the real risk, supply access disappearing forever, and that's the trap. Now let's talk about the institutional playbook, because this is what retail never sees. Institutions accumulate during boredom, not during hype, when Bitcoin trades sideways. When retail loses interest. When nothing is exciting. That's when institutions can buy size without blowing up the price. They can execute quietly, they can build positions efficiently, but when the hype returns, when Bitcoin starts screaming higher, institutions don't chase, because liquidity becomes thin, spreads widen, slippage increases, it becomes inefficient, so they slow down and let retail do what retail always does, FOMO at the worst time, and then when the market cools again, institutions return to accumulate even more. That cycle repeats, and every cycle, more Bitcoin moves from weak hands into permanent custody. That is the one-way ratchet. Now let's make this painfully clear. Institutional custody is not like retail custody. When Bitcoin moves into ETFs, it tends to stay there. When it moves into corporate treasuries, it stays there. When sovereign money allocates, it's measured in decades. This isn't trading inventory. This is strategic accumulation, which means every coin that gets absorbed by these entities is a coin retail will likely never see again, and the supply shrinkage becomes irreversible. That's why I keep saying, this is not a price story, it's an access story. Here's the psychological mistake almost everyone makes. They think price is the main variable. Should I buy now? Should I wait? Am I getting a good entry? But price is not the main variable anymore. Time is. You could buy Bitcoin today, and it could dip tomorrow. That feels bad temporarily, but you own the scarce asset, you have access, you're in the network, you're positioned. But if you wait too long, and the liquid supply is drained, price becomes irrelevant, because you can't buy what isn't available. That is the scenario people aren't even considering. They're optimizing for entry, while ignoring the real risk, missing the window entirely. And here's the cruel part. Bitcoin can still be early in global adoption. While being late in supply availability, only a small percent of the world owns Bitcoin. Yes, that's true, but institutions don't need the whole world to buy. They just need enough capital to absorb the remaining liquid supply. And institutional adoption is exponential. Retail adoption is linear. That means supply disappears faster than most people can emotionally process, so you can be early in the story, but late to the supply. And that's the paradox we're living through. Now let me bring this back to cycles. People hear 4-year cycle and assume they have 4 years to act. That's not how it works. The real opportunity window inside a cycle is short. Accumulation phase, then a supply shock, then price acceleration, then retail FOMO, then peak, then the next reset. But here's the thing. Each cycle the base gets higher. Each cycle more supply disappears permanently. Each cycle the accumulation window shrinks, and the next cycle after the next having might not even offer a clean accumulation window at all. Because the liquid supply may already be gone. That's what people aren't ready for. They're waiting for the next cycle. And the next cycle might be an environment where you can only buy exposure through intermediaries. At massive premiums. With friction. With gatekeepers, not direct access, not clean ownership, not simple accumulation. So here's the truth. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying it because this is the reality of fixed supply meeting accelerating demand. The market is being structurally drained. The clock is ticking, and you either recognize what's happening, or you wait and regret it later, because the regret isn't I should have bought lower. The regret is, I had the chance, and I didn't take it, and now it's gone. And that is the most painful kind of regret, because it's permanent. The clock doesn't stop. It doesn't care about your hesitation. It doesn't care about your need for certainty. It just runs out. And when it runs out, the opportunity doesn't come back. Not ever. Now let's get back to Bitcoin.